Well, good morning. This is JM. I'm on the Iconic Production Twitch channel, and we're doing another episode of Behind the Screen, which is just a time where I get to hang out and chat and verbally process some of my design options and do some book reviews and game reviews. And I've got a lot of fun things planned for Thursdays. We're going to do Warhammer. We're going to do God's War, the Gloranthan board game. Hey, Bob. Mr. Bob Crumb, as always, is in the chat. Bob, I linked to your YouTube channel in my last um, video that I did. Someone was like, who is this person you're talking about? Can you please let us know? Bob is an amazing artist. I love working with him. I actually was working with him this morning, was putting together art direction for two different projects, and I managed to snag Bob for two pieces from an upcoming 13th Age book, and I'm looking forward to that. The other book that I did art development on, did development and art direction on, the Drakenhall book, I believe is now available for pre-order on the Pelgrane site, and you'll recognize some of Bob's pieces in that one as well. So in addition to Warhammer 4th edition, this Thursday, next week, we're going to talk about God's War, and then I think I'm going to do a video just on, I've been asked a lot, where do I get my inspiration from? So we'll talk about some of my favorite novels and authors and resources that I use for game design and development. Sorry about last week, lost my voice. Got sick, had no voice for 3 days. My family really enjoyed it. I'm a verbal processor, so I was forced to sit alone with my thoughts. And very excited to be here this morning, able to talk and chat. So today we're going to talk about monster design. What makes a good monster? Why what we should be considering when we look at monster design, and specifically we're going to be doing monster design for Jackals because that's kind of the theme that I'm going with on Tuesdays is game design and developing Eki Ezeru, which if you are not familiar with is the mega dungeon, this ruined mansion that has been cursed and destroyed, and hopefully we'll get Bob to do some art for this. I'll try and commission some of these monsters from Eki Ezeru with Bob. Bob, I'm also writing a script or a series of short stories that could be easily turned into a comic book script, but we can talk about that later. Also, in case you haven't checked it out, go over to the Iconic Production YouTube channel. Evan and I released a special episode of Exploring Glorantha. We were able to interview Rick Meintz of who's the president of Chaosium, which was just a ton of fun. We talked about the Johnstown Compendium, the RuneQuest Renaissance, and we talked about the Upland Marsh and the death-worshipping ducks of Glorantha. Yeah, Bob, if I ever get you into a Gloranthan game, I want you to play a death-worshipping, undead-slaying, sword-wielding murder mallard in that game. But we're here to talk about Jackals and monster design. So, yeah, death-worshipping ducks. We will have to have a discussion about this at some point. They're one of my favorite things from Glorantha. But today we're talking about monster design. What kind of monsters do I want in Eki Ezeru, which is, again, this sort of Moria-esque, Killagius-esque underground mansion that has now fallen into ruin and has become infested by beasts and creatures and terrors of the deep. So we kind of talked about yesterday, or last Tuesday, the first monster that I want to design, which is going to be these Rathics of Hunger called the Kashaptu. And so a Rathic in Jackals is a spiritual entity, a creature not of this world, but that belongs to a different spiritual plane. In Hebrew, you could argue that the word Elohim kind of falls into Rathic and Elohim have some similar semantic origins because, or semantic meanings, because Elohim kind of refers to a class of creatures. Yes, in the Old Testament, very often Yahweh is referred to as Elohim, but also you get weird uses of Elohim. They talk about other gods that Israel is not supposed to worship. They talk about when Samuel is brought back by the witch of Endor. She refers to an Elohim rising up out of the ground. So Rathic kind of refers to a class of entity. There are many different types of Rathic in my world. Sorry, you guys all had to go down the linguistic rabbit hole with me on that one. Phantom of Truth, always good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. To everyone else in the chat, feel free to jump in, make some comments. I would love to. Yeah, Padre, good, good. It is the generic version of God. Yes. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So, Rathic specifically in Jackals refers to those Elohim who have um, fallen from their place in the world. They have either desired worship or they have taken worship and taken dominion uh, or attempted to take dominion from the realms that they were assigned to. So think of it in Tolkienist terms. You have the Valar, who are stewards of the world, and Manwë is king of Arda. But also you have Melkor, who desires dominion over himself. And maybe we'll do a lengthy video on the mythology, because I haven't actually published any of the poems or the myths that undergird the Jackals world. But they're there. And so the Rathic specifically are entities that fall under Emil Agius's domain, who is the thorn in the flesh of the world. But all that to say is I want to create a creature that has the ability to consume the spiritual energy of and memories of the creatures that enter into Eki Ezeru. So that's one monster. This is going to probably be several weeks that we're going to do this, because I can't design 3 monsters just in the scope of one 20-minute video. But as we talk through this, again, I'm a verbal processor, love interacting with people. Perhaps we'll get some good design principles to start. So we're going to put down here that we're going to have the shop too. I also want to have some sort of lycanthrope. There is the Melkoni, which are the kind of the Greek analog in Jackals. They have a story of a hero who goes out to fight a Cyclops, just this horrible creature that is ravaging the Valley of Troikis, which is right around where Eki Ezeru eventually ends up or being. And he is tasked by Eraton, who is the head of the Melkoni pantheon, to go and slay Sinan, this giant. And Sinan is known for his wiles and his craftiness. And in fact, this myth is described in full in Travelers on the War Road, which will be available in August from Osprey Publishing. But he tracks down Sinan. Sinan wrecks his ship, calls up a storm. So the hero has no one that they are, has to go on alone while his men repair the ship. And he comes to the house of Sinan and supposed to slay him. And Sinan keeps trying to get him to eat and drink. Sinan is wily and crafty and tries to talk with this hero who is known for ending wars and attempting to resolve things peacefully. And eventually, after a long night of conversation, Sinan gets him to accept several bowls of wine, which then means that technically this hero is under the hospitality rules that Eraton has laid down, which is a violation of what he was told to do. And then he accepts food and ends up consuming human flesh. Specifically, I'll save that part of the myth. It's a very dark myth, but Eraton and Sinan are cursed for this act, and Eraton is forced to become this ravenous wolf creature. The hero is forced to become this ravenous wolf creature because he's consumed human flesh. Specifically the flesh of his family, which Sinan has kidnapped and then boiled in a very tender stew. So I want, yes, Ben Feehan, welcome to behind the screen, always good to chat with you. Yes, accidental cannibalism is somehow not the worst cannibalism, but it's still pretty bad, and he does get cursed for it. So that's the second creature that I want. I want these descendants of this Melkoni hero who has become cursed. Now, I don't want it to be sort of a Germanic style, or what we would maybe consider more of a Western style werewolf or lycanthrope, where either they're using skins to change their shape, or they are if you are a fan of Lon Chaney Jr., the sort of classical Wolfman take on this. I want these to be I want this more to be like a Wendigo spirit, where because of these acts, the progenitor of the curse is able to inflict his curse on those who do, um, who follow in his footsteps. So the wolves of Troicus are actually these large, almost warg-like creatures with human intelligence that have given in to this bestial, this violatory hunger. They've consumed human flesh, and therefore the curse of Ajax is then passed on to them. So that's the second thing I want. I want some sort of lycanthrope. I'll come up with a cool name for it. But in essence, what I want with the lycanthrope is both of these beasts are going to be corruptive in nature. I want Eki Ezeru to have this desperate feeling that, yes, if you could reclaim it, what treasures, what untold glories, what things of the past could you bring back to the Zaharets and kind of rebuild your culture's kingdoms to their former glory. But also, you're not just risking your body, you are risking your soul to go in and do this. So those are the two monsters I really want to design. The third one is we'll kind of get into when we get into the lore of Jackals and Eki Ezeru. These are going to be the children of the Han that were taken by the Kashaptu and corrupted in the depths of Eki Ezeru and have come back to kill their former parents and now have reign of the deeper bowels of the mansion. Yes, Ben, noetic horror, a term that I learned from Ben, and this is what I want the focus of this dungeon to be. A noetic horror is a horror that doesn't threaten your body; it threatens your sanity, like cosmic horror. This is something that threatens your soul and your existence. Padre, glad to have you here. Yes, I am a giant ancient Near East nerd. I got my degree in ancient Near East, or my master's in ancient Near East languages and theology, and I have a giant shelf of just ancient Near East myths and stories and histories kind of right off there to the side. So you have found a kindred spirit here on Twitch, and it's good to meet you and chat with you. All right, so those are the two monsters we're going to start with. We're going to start with these lycanthropes, and we're going to start with the Rathic. So I'm going to move this over and kind of zoom in, and so we're going to talk about good design principles as we sort of talk about this. So I always find it's best to start with what do you want the goal of the experience of the creature to be. Mechanics are actually pretty easy. Whether you're playing in 5th edition, whether you're playing in Pathfinder 2, whether you're doing 13th Age. I did a lot of 13th Age monster design over the last several months because I developed for 13th Age. So getting into mechanics and developing monsters is part of my job. But here's the thing, whether you're doing it in any of these game systems, I would argue that 80% of the time, your theme is far more important than your mechanics. Because take Tanar, a D20 setting that I use whenever I'm sort of running D&D, Pathfinder 2, that sort of thing. There are no orcs, there are no goblins. Those don't exist in Tanar. There are Var, these spider-like creatures. 9 times out of 10, I'm reskinning a goblin or a gnoll or a orc to just reflavor it to create something that to my players seems unique, but mechanically is very simple and low bar for me to bring to the table quickly. With Jackals, or with a very special monster, when you're designing something from the ground up, you want to know what that monster is, what their place in the world is before you start doing mechanics, because I am a big fan of theme should inform design. Your world should inform your design, not the other way around. That's why most of the games I like to play and that I design, they're inseparable. Like Clash and Jackals go together because that is how it was designed. Several of the other games that I'm working through, that is what I do. Games like Lord of the Rings, or sorry, The One Ring, that game was designed from the ground up to be Middle Earth. And I think, while Adventures in Middle Earth is a great 5th edition game and version of 5th edition, for me, mechanically, The One Ring is so much better because every mechanic goes back to the world premises. So I realized that I just rambled a bunch about game design and monster design. Let's get into these monsters. So what do we know about the Kashaptu? Well, they're Rathic, so they're spiritual entities. So I think we're going to lay out our themes today, and then next week on Tuesday, we're actually going to build one of these monsters in Jackals. So I'll be able to show you how I design monsters in Jackals. And hopefully that'll be helpful for you if you end up picking up Jackals or are running Jackals, that you can see how these things work. And then also for my players, if you are watching, it doesn't matter if you watch this video, these monsters will still be terrifying to encounter in Eki Ezeru as you go running into. So they're spiritual entities. So in Jackals, that means they're hard to damage because they don't exist entirely on this plane. You can't just take a bronze leaf blade sword and cut apart a spirit. So spiritual entities resistant to damage. Spiritual entities in my games also, they damage your valor. It is always terrifying to encounter something this far off of mortal, if that makes sense. No matter how thanks, Phantom. Phantom was commenting, yeah, already not to fuss about facing these things in Jackals, yeah. So though, what I want from these, I want these creatures to have a terrifying ability to consume that which they attack. They don't just steal something from you, but they absorb it into themselves. So what I want to design, I want to kind of write that down so I have a good design principle for this. So they're consumptive. They take and incorporate. So what do you guys think? I was thinking, this is why I married an editor, because I'm bad at writing, or I'm bad at spelling and sentence structure and knowing the difference between which and that. I have a lot of editorial needs, so thankfully I was blessed with a wife who loves to edit. So I'm thinking they're going to try and steal memories. They'll try and steal devotion, and they'll sap valor. And so what will they eat? They will eat memories, valor, devotion. What will they turn that into, right? The whole point is, I feel like we're quickly establishing that there is a cannibalistic. So my thought was, well, what, like, their damage could go up. Did I just go offline? No. Oh, I'm back. I disconnected for a second. Okay, so violation through consumption. That was what we're going to go on talking about. And then Bob asked the question, well, what happens with what they eat? So Bob, I'm thinking that a couple of things. And I'm taking any suggestions from people as we kind of talked about this. One of the things I was thinking is obviously a simple thing is damage bonus goes up, right? The more they eat of you, the more they can consume you, or the more they can hurt you. What do you mean? Phantom of Truth asks, do they grok? What do you mean by that? Something damage bonus was up, maybe skill, like as they start to learn about you, they learn how to deal with you better. Increase of skill. I also think that they're gonna, if I want to get really crazy. All right, so let me ask you this question. How does the idea of, as they consume this, they actually have a small list of rights that they could spell or that they could invoke. So essentially, as they eat you, they use your essence to power their own magic. So they start off the fight not necessarily being able to invoke these rites or rituals or powers. But the longer the fight goes on, well, yes, you are weakening their body, spiritually they're getting much stronger. And so you have to kill these things quickly, you have to deal with them with potent magics, or you have to run from them. Yeah, okay. That was what you were going with when you said grok. I appreciate that. Phantom of Truth. I have been told that I need to more broadly interact and talk with the people in the chat. So if you are watching this on YouTube, you know who I'm talking with. So I think what we'll do is we'll save the lycanthrope for next Tuesday and kind of do the same thing. What was that? Was that in Shang-Chi? Bob said you could throw them off by shouting lyrics to Hotel California. I'm pretty sure that was from Shang-Chi. Am I remembering that right? So yeah, we'll talk about the lycanthropes. But what I'm seeing already, just from our discussions here and kind of working through this, is the lycanthropes outside of the mansion, outside of Eki Ezeru, are the physical representation of this threat. They consume flesh and then become flesh eaters. And then when you transition into the mansion, you encounter the Kashaptu, the spiritual side of this again, this very kind of consumption that violates, that steals, transgressive consumption might be the way to talk about that. I feel like Eki Ezeru is getting darker and darker the more I talk about this, and I feel like that's good. So, almost done with my coffee. It is about 25 minutes in, so I'll do my wrap up here. Thank you all for joining me. Again, on Thursday, we're going to be behind the screen with Warhammer 4th edition, which is, I always turn to the wrong direction, which is this up here. It's by Cubicle 7. It is a delightful role-playing game, and I actually think it might possibly become, in my opinion, it might be the best version of Warhammer fantasy in the old world that we have seen in recent memory, and if not in the whole of the oeuvre of Warhammer. Ooh, all right, so two things before we log off here. So Phantom of Truth asks, could they eventually become the Eaten? And I think yes. I think that we'll add that in here before we sign off, that we would have PCs could become the Eaten. And then Padre, it's not a mechanical element, but I'd love to see the GM be able to use the memories to hit them in the worst spot that they have. Yes, I will be putting some narrative mechanics around that as well. Let's keep notes in here. Use memories against the Jackals. Perfect. So I'll see you guys all on Thursday. We're going to have more behind the screen. We're back to our regular twice a week. Bi-weekly just doesn't work. Is that twice a week? Is that every other week? So twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 Central. I'll be here talking behind the screen. Check us out on YouTube. We have a ton of back log of videos. We have all of our actual plays from Call of Cthulhu, 13th Age, 5th edition. We have several Jackals videos and small adventures if you guys want to check those out. We did post our Grand Campaign Episode 1, which I'm very excited about to be sharing out in the world. It's actually available now on iTunes and wherever you get your podcasts from. And I will be back on Thursday with a review of Warhammer 4th edition. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming, and I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good one.